Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Your Next 50. I am Sylvia.
I am Jenny.
And we are inviting you to join us in our conversation today. And we are going to invite you to play big, be intentional, to create the abundant life that you desire and that you deserve.
You bet. You bet.
And we are happy that you are here with us today. And what a show we have in store. What a conversation. It has some pricklies, Jenny.
It has some pricklies. And I don't know if you guys saw my email post this week. I was like, no, I do not want to talk about boundaries. I suck at boundaries. And then Sylvia said, that's just a story you're telling yourself, Jenny. And I was like, oh, dang it, you're right. So it is prickly. Curious to see in the comments, how many of you love boundaries? How many of you hate boundaries? And the place we want to take you today is really how boundaries can actually help you take charge of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's something like right away when I brought this show up, this was my idea of a show, and you were like, no, Sylvia, we're not talking about this. And you said, I hate the word boundaries. Yeah. And I think and you listed a whole bunch of words. You want to read those words that you put up?
Yeah.
There's a whole, and you were like, let me think about this for a second. And then boom, you listed like 20 words. Let's listen to this list.
Okay. Boundaries, boxes, responsibility, repeatedness, fenced in, told what to do, limits, compromise, choice, sacrifice, dropping balls. Yeah.
Whoa. Like that's, you really don't like the word?
I really don't like the word. It's kind of the same way I feel about self-care. Self-care, fluff-care. Like I don't like that word. So then as I thought about boundaries, it was this idea actually of being fenced in. And that's something I hate that. I hate the idea of being boxed in. And I told you I'd be okay if the boundaries were made of elastics. Do you remember that? I said, yeah, if they were elasticated, I'm into it, Sylvia.
But there are issues with that. And I've been thinking about your elastic analogy because Jenny's like, well, if I can just, sometimes have to tweak it. And then they don't become boundaries. They become other things. And let's just take, I'm self-proclaiming the title of a queen or maybe a princess. I'm not the queen just yet, but I've been working on boundaries for a while. The princess of boundaries, let's put it that way. And it goes back to our priorities and our values, how we want others to treat us. And I find that, and I know you for a long time, and I know that elastic analogy, you want to give it some space. You want to be allowed to stretch them where you want to. Yeah. But then it allows you to move. How does that say? It's not that I want to be rigid. I get where you're coming from.
I think I know what you mean about the how the elastic doesn't work. So what it does is it puts into a false sense of comfort with this play, and it makes something acceptable that's actually not acceptable. So since we picked up this topic, I actually have shifted a little bit, and the thing that actually hit home for me was what you said about, and I'm going to read your definition of boundaries, the limits we set with other people, which indicate what we find acceptable and unacceptable in their behavior towards us.
Yeah, I just took that from the internet, and I thought that was a good definition.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's how the rules we put in place, the rules that I have, that will tell you that how to treat me. Like example, my daughter the other day was having a huge tantrum of, I can't even remember what it was. And I was like, I am sorry, but I will not be spoken to that way. It's not you can't speak to me that way. I cannot be in this space right now where you are speaking to me this way. When you are calmer, you go and calm down, and then you can come and talk to me. And she was like, it kind of just like was this, slap. It wasn't a physical slap, but it was just, she
Yeah.
woke up. What do you mean you can't listen to me right now? And I said, well,
Yeah.
you are yelling
Yeah.
and I can't talk to you that way.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
she went away and came back, and then we had a great talk about it.
Yeah.
But that was me saying, no, these are my boundaries.
Yeah.
And that goes with kids, goes with spouses, goes with friends. It goes with time. It goes with bosses, our clients. We have clients that are showing up late all the time.
Yeah.
There was a woman on a feed today that she was talking about. She doesn't feel respected. She said her clients don't show up on time. They don't pay on time.
Yeah.
They're not tagging her in their posts about saying how great she is. And then she said she realized that the boundaries around herself were not visible or strong enough for herself. And therefore, people were not treating her well because she was not treating herself well.
Yeah. I remember, so this ties into money. We love money, talking about money. I remember a time where I was first with my business coach, and the client had said to me, I was about to do a bunch of work for them, but they hadn't paid. And I was getting ready for a meeting at, let's call it 3:00. And my business coach said to me, well, you can't attend that meeting. And I said, what do you mean I can't attend? She said, you haven't been paid. Oh. And I made all these excuses about why the client hadn't paid and how they couldn't do interact and all this stuff. And she said, Jenny, what are you teaching them about you if you show up at a meeting where you haven't been paid? And
you're teaching them that that's okay.
I know.
And it's not okay because you go away feeling like crap, feeling not respected, that your work is not valued.
Yeah. Or I'm always the one that acquiesces. It's okay. I take that internally and eventually it explodes, rarely on the client, more often on my family, on my dog, on all the other things that happen in my life. So here's the cool part about the end of that story. I took the initiative. So this is what show is about change, small changes. I took the initiative, said, I'm sorry, but I won't be able to attend the meeting, unless I have payment for the contract. To which I had been told they couldn't do interact. Well, you know what? By the end of the day, they'd figured out how to do interact, and I had my money.
Oh, good for them. Good for you. Good for you, really. I mean,
but
I'm being sarcastic about them, right?
Yeah, but the stories we tell ourselves. And so the takeaway for me is, or the coaching question I have for those of you listening is, how are you showing up? How are you behaving? What are you allowing? What are you tolerating in your lives, which creates the environment that's around you? Because you do have ownership, or sovereignty over those actions. Whether it's little things like, one of my bad habits is, I'll just do that thing for the person that hasn't sent it to me yet, because it'll be easier for me to do it instead of them. Well, you take away the opportunity for them to show up and for them to help when you do it for them. Or I'll just take on the responsibility of the Zoom link, or I do that all the time, right? So what message am I sending these people when I take away their roles and their jobs? I'm sending the message that they're incapable, that I'm the only one that can do it. And then I get mad because I'm the martyr. Like, come on, Sylvia.
And then you're overwhelmed. I think what I see in my practice a lot, my coaching practice, is the overwhelm. And when I tell clients, well, the overwhelm is a choice, right? And we've had that discussion.
Yes,
you
many times.
When we're feeling overwhelmed, we all can feel that way. It's never perfect, right? There's no fully balanced life. But where are we? Where are the boundaries not being? When is that elastic being pulled too much, right? Because you said, well, sometimes, Sylvia, I need to pull that elastic and go out of my boundaries a little bit. But then I know that it's going to affect another part of my life. And I look at when I started my doula agency and was working with clients, and I was on the road a lot. I was trying to fit in all these clients, and heaven forbid they could not come and see me during the day, right? Everyone was working. So I was working weekends and evenings. I had little kids. They were 1, 3, and 5. And at one point, my hubby says to me, Sylvia, we have to look at this. You can't keep doing this. And you're like, it took me a while, took me a while to say, you're right, but it was affecting my family life. So when I put those boundaries in place and said, oh, I'm sorry, I do work one evening a week. It's Tuesdays. The next Tuesday that's available is in 3 weeks, or you can meet me perhaps during your lunch hour at the end of the day. And then, lo and behold, end of day is possible, or lunchtime is possible. And then that, so, but it's a step, it's
process.
Block after block, learning, and where where do those boundaries show up? How do they manifest themselves? And it's through frustration, stress, and overwhelm for me.
Yeah, something's got to change is the subtext. So another thing I find about boundaries is it's a lot easier to do it when you're calm and when you're planning it than in the moment. So along the same lines, I remember one day coming home and being like, just grumble, and being not ready and organized for the next day. And my husband said to me, well, no wonder you've been out 3 nights this week. And I honestly hadn't made the correlation, to be honest. Like, I was kind of mad at him. That's maybe like, no. But he was right. So everything has cause and effect. And what I mean by the choice in advance is, okay, what is acceptable in this time of my life? There's certain nights I play tennis. You all know about my tennis obsession. And then there's probably one night a month that I do a board meeting. And what do I want to show up for? And so I've tried to plan ahead so that when somebody asks me for something, I already know my answer or my boundary around that. So those are, always, the other thing for me is people wanting to do board retreats, which are often on the weekends, which is fine as long as I plan ahead for them. And I know that I'm going to take some time Friday because I'm still going to have to do groceries. The grocery fairy doesn't come to my house yet.
Oh, no. Oh, I wish you'd come to my house. We didn't get the memo, Jenny. Where do we sign up for her?
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, Colleen says here, sometimes when boundaries aren't set and adhered to, others can take advantage of us. Well, for me, it's actually, we feel that they're taking advantage of us, right? It's a perception. Yeah. On the other side, we enable their bad behavior. Yes. Saying no is important. And one of the coaches that I've been following, her story is, in her relationship with her spouse, there was addiction there 10 years ago. And, woe is me. And she was the martyr and helping him. And, and in the end, it all came down to she had to put really clear boundaries. And it kind of reminds me of my kids, right? The consequences, if you don't get, I can't deal with this anymore. If you don't get your shit together, I'm leaving. It can go to that extreme. And if we look at that in the business world, okay, well, if this doesn't change in my job, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
If you don't pay me, I'm not working with you anymore, right? For client work.
Or
it sounds drastic, doesn't it when we say it that way? But we are valuing ourselves and putting ourselves first.
Or as my husband would say, you're not working for shits and giggles.
Right?
And it was funny when he said it, because I'm not a person that aligns work with money. You guys know that already. But when he put it that way, I was like, oh crap. Yeah. Like that sucks. One more thought about boundaries for me, again, just trying to share what works for me. Working boundaries in towards something is always more attractive to me than the scarcity mindset of removing. So for example, if I set a boundary about finishing work at 5:00, it's so that I can play tennis. It's not because I insert explanation here. So I remember when somebody said to me the first time, you can either be working or you can be doing something else you love. And I was like, oh, well, when you put it that way, I have a choice, because the other option was you're either working or you're doing nothing. And that, I didn't like the idea of nothing, because you know how I like to keep busy, Sylvia. So I think about what you would like to do at that time, or what would be possible if you had the boundary in place. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's so interesting. If you're listening, let us know, like, what are the boundaries that you might have, find challenging to put in place. And if you're having a hard time coming up with something, it's thinking when, like Colleen mentioned, when did I feel taken advantage of? When, we don't control other people, we control ourselves. And it's where do we have that control? And boundaries allow us to make decisions based on our values in life. It's so important.
Yeah. So let's dive into two things. One is why should we set boundaries? If you're listening going, I'm okay with this, or like, I'm okay with the way things are rolling, I'd like to reach out to you and sort of talk about some of the reasons we set boundaries. Number one for me is it avoids burnout, right? So I always say it takes 3 months to get into burnout, and therefore it takes 3 months to get out of burnout. It's like pregnancy, right? 9 months in, 9 months out.
There you go.
So the motivation for me is not the burnout. It's wasting all that time getting out of it. I'm much better off to nip it at the bud at the beginning. So why set boundaries? Burnout, beware of the overwhelm, unhappiness. Ooh, yeah, definitely.
I think we've both had our share of, dealing with, perhaps mine was not a clinical burnout, or maybe it would have been had I gone and seen somebody about it. But for me, the boundary I put in place was, okay, I exercise in the morning.
Yeah.
That's a boundary. Like it becomes a habit. Habit and boundaries are closely related.
Yeah.
So I had to put that habit in. That was a boundary. And no, I can't take a meeting during that time. I can't do a call. I can't, I don't know what, whatever, volunteer for the school, whatever it is. I can't speak with you, Jenny, at 8:00 in the morning. I'm exercising or going for a walk and doing my spirituality work because that's important to me.
Yeah.
But that didn't come overnight because I got to a really low place a few years ago and I wasn't exercising. And that was making me very unhappy. So that boundary, oh my gosh, what a change.
Yeah, I love that. And we were talking about earlier with one of my clients about what she's learned from her board chair has very clear boundaries around certain times of the day where she's out walking or whatever, or time to do meetings or time to do, etc. And, we can learn a lot from the people in our lives that are doing it well. And because I'm a role model kind of person, when I see someone doing it well and still showing up as sincere, honest, decent, empathetic, compassionate, I know I'm in the right track, right? It's possible because I think we have stories, about boundaries that niggle around in our heads. It's okay for other people, but it's not okay for us, right? That we can't set boundaries. So why don't people set boundaries, Sylvia?
Yeah, that's a good one. Why don't they? It's hard to. They're afraid of judgment, right? Oh my gosh, if I say no, what are they going to think? We're afraid of upsetting others, the volunteer committee at your school or at work or being on another committee. Oh my gosh, if I'm in line for that promotion, they won't give it to me. Or if I say no to that extra client work without paying for it, without the client paying for it, they might go somewhere else. So I better do it. And then, you end up doing 5 extra hours, 10 extra hours for no pay because we're afraid of rocking the boat.
Yeah.
But we're at an age now. Look, I'm going to put this banner up here. Your next 50. We're at the age now where I don't care what the other person is thinking, because if I start to care what they think, then I'm crossing my own boundaries and I'm going to be upset. Yeah. But of course, I'm coming from this with love for myself, love, for my family and for what I stand for.
Yeah. Yes. I just had an aha of like, I love you, person in front of me asking me something, but I also love me.
Yes.
Right.
And no is a complete sentence, right, Jenny?
Oh, I'm not good at that one.
That's going to be another show. We'll do another show just on that.
So here's what I think about no. I think that I'm a fundraiser. We have all sorts of different kinds of no's. So I'm going to go with no, or I'm going to go with yes, and you should revisit that because I'll be ready to join your board next year. That's a yes, no.
Isn't that good? Say that again. Do that again. Say that one.
So yes, and I will be ready to join your board next year. So it's not about this year. The other thing I think is things like no, not right now. That makes me feel better. No, that's the wrong project. Find me something else that's less time conclusive. No, that's not a good fit for me. No, I know someone who can serve you better.
So good.
All these different ways that we can say no that, let's be honest, soften the blow. I still care, Sylvia. This is part of my problem. I'm still a pleaser. But where I have come from with that is I am also giving myself permission to care about me. And that's the change for me.
And I brought up the cliche, putting your oxygen mask on before you help others put it on. And I know you do not like that. Did you all get that? Jenny's sticking out her tongue as we're talking. You can't see that if you're not live with us here. But
it's epic.
She does not like that. But I like that. That does not bother me at all. Tell us why you don't like that. I know it's just too cliche.
It's a tough one for me. So I think in my heart of hearts, I don't want it to be that simple. That's what it is.
You're making it complicated.
I know I am. I know.
Because if it comes down to, we all know what that means, right? We have to help ourselves before helping other people.
And it's interesting to do this show because I realize this was what's so great about talking with you is I reflect on like, oh wow, how much I have learned. So empathy really only happens if you can have it for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So that one works better for me than the oxygen mask, just because I think you're right, the kitschiness of it. But if you ask me how I show up for my friends and for my clients and the kind of empathy and compassion I have for them, and then you ask me in the next breath, well, wouldn't you expect that of them for you? And wouldn't you want to give that to yourself? I'd be like, heck yes. You bet.
Or another way, like, what would you tell me, Jenny?
Yeah.
As one of your best friends? Exactly. What would you tell me if I were in that situation? Would you speak to me the same way you speak to yourself? Right. You'd probably no. Of course not. Would I speak to my children the way, that we beat ourselves up sometimes? And that goes back to boundaries as well. How do I speak to myself? Those are the harder boundaries, I think, to address. Yeah. I find it easier to address, other people with boundaries with other people, the external. But when it comes to the internal, we've talked about that a lot in other episodes. So if you're listening, what is this bringing up for you? We can't be the only ones. The only ones working through all of this.
And remember, boundaries relate to time. They relate to emotions. Actually, I have to stop on that one. Emotions. So again, my thing about planning ahead, how much emotion am I willing to invest in this relationship, in this family issue, in this family matter? So time, emotions, money, energy, boundaries around energy, relationships, family, right? So again, not being in the moment and going, oh, shoot, I should not have come over here tonight, right? But instead, I know that I commit to, I'm lucky, my family's pretty awesome, and that's less of a problem for us. But I hear people talk about duties. Yeah.
The issues around family and parents, the boundaries that are not clear with our own parents and parents treating, the older parents treating us adults in certain ways, and the roles people take on. There are life, I think that probably when we talk boundaries, everyone has a story there. Everybody. I'm thinking about 10 of them right now, but this is not a show about mother-daughter relationships.
It could be. We could totally do a show about that.
But boundaries with parents, right? Yeah. And that boundaries with our teenagers. It all goes back. It's like, people, I think we live in a world with other people, and for us to be happy, creating those guidelines. Oops. Let's call them guidelines, if we don't want to call them boundaries, right?
Yeah. The other day I was working with a client and I called them rules, right? So there's a set of rules I'm going to follow. And if it trips up any of those rules, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to ask myself why I'm accepting that change in that rule, why there's a change, right? A boundary. Colleen says here, boundaries should fence out that guilt trip that we often feel, especially as parents when our kids are young. Yes, we have to look after ourselves, or we are no good to anyone else. Oh, Colleen, I mean, yeah, it's so true. It's hard when the kids are little. I have to say that was a particularly difficult time for me. But it goes back to what kind of kids do you want to raise too? Do you want kids that need you around all the time, or do you want to teach kids that being bored is actually part of being a 6-year-old's life? My job is not, these poor parents that are home with their kids. Can we just take a minute, pandemic parents? This is a virtual clap to all of you that have children at home, like under the age of 10. It's a mess. I feel for you. I have so much empathy for you if you're home with kids. And you know that the reality is they're adapting too, but you are not their boundaries. You are not their playmate all the time. You can be their playmate in certain times, but you've also got other things to do. So great show, great conversation. How are we going to walk them out of this? Like, so what, Sylvia? You know, what's the message from this show? What is it we want people to walk away from about this?
Well, I think understanding that the issues we have in our lives, the way we're feeling in our lives, and particularly when it's prickly, are due to not setting the appropriate boundaries. So I invite you then to look at where that is in your life right now. Is it a relationship? Is it with a client, a boss, a family member, your spouse? Where is that happening? And then what boundaries are you putting in place for yourself? Because we tend to go into victimhood. Oh, woe is me. He spoke to me that way. You can't speak to me that way. But how am I showing up here, right? And then if I am clear, and also following through, when you have boundaries, are you following through on what you are saying? And we see that with children a lot, right? You're going to get a consequence if you don't do this. But then if you don't give them, that's me often with my kids. And I don't the follow through.
Yeah. Well, I had a client this week who was talking about multitasking and how it was really messing up his life. And we made a commitment that every time he did it, he was going to put money in a jar. And it was going to go towards a charity that he hated, like something that was so fundamentally against his values. And I love that. I think it's a really fun one, right? And so,
you don't want to fill up your jar then, do you?
Imagine me giving, I have to imagine me giving money to the NRA, for example, like
right?
Like
that would
be a motivator for me to
you just would stop. You would stop cold turkey. And change can happen overnight, people. Will it be easy? No, it will not be easy. Will other people not perhaps like the changes you are making or the boundaries that you're putting in place? No, they will not. And that is okay. That's another tidbit. So homework, we're saying, where is it prickly? What boundaries are existent and what boundaries will you put in place? And did we have a third one?
What's your role in it? What part are you playing? So if it's happening, it's always easier to point the finger that way. It's a lot harder to point the finger. If you're on audio, I'm pointing the finger at myself now to go, what part am I playing in this? God, I hate that question, but it's so, so important. And maybe that's why I didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Because I know I have a part in it. I know it up here, but I just don't want to look.
You don't want to see it because once you're aware of it, then you can't be unaware. Right? Once your client is going to keep putting the jars to the NRA, money in the jar to the NRA or whatever his cause is, he's aware of it. He can't, he'll have to change. And change, we have a story that it is difficult. What a great conversation, my friend, and all of you for listening. Thank you so much for being with us here today. We have a great show coming up next week too.
Oh, wow. Nice little segue. How to get out of your own way. Are we really only giving 30 minutes to this? Like, I feel like this could be
we're going to come back to this one. Okay. We'll come back and we'll take one aspect of it, I think,
Absolutely.
Wonderful. You can follow us here, two places. On our podcast, Your Next 50, on your favorite podcast player, and on our YouTube channel if you want to look at us. It depends if you are a visual person or if you're an auditory person. Have a wonderful week. Go out and set a boundary. Let us know what that is. You can follow us also on Facebook and Instagram at Your Next 50 Podcast. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.